Hello and welcome back. So we've completed the low poly for our sword now with all transformations cleared, everything cleared up. We're now going to start moving through and actually UV unwrapping this piece. And we're going to start out with the easiest portion first. We're going to do the blade and then move upwards. There's going to be some considerations with our pommel that we need to make, but the blade itself is going to be a really straightforward process to actually UV unwrap. So I'm just going to do what I've done previously. I'm going to set my workspace to UV editing just to make my life a bit easier. And the first thing we'll notice is our UVs look terrible. This is because we've done lots of changes and we've not actually done any projections. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to select everything within my scene. We're going to go to create, and I'm just going to do what I've done previously and do a camera-based selection on this piece. And you'll see it's giving us these three shells of our point. They're going to look rather terrible. Not really an issue right now at all. So with this, I'm just going to start out with our blade. So I'm just going to isolate that by pressing Control 1, and we're going to start identifying areas that we need to have for our seams. So I know that for the most part, I want my seams to line up with the sharp edges that we've got, though there will be some exceptions, such as the blade all the way around. But I'm actually going to take a bit of a planar approach to this, in that, when we look at it from that direction, we can have a UV sorted out there. When we look at it, when we look at it from this direction of the front or the back, we can kind of have our UVs build up from there. So I'm going to start out initially just by double clicking this edge loop and see how it goes all the way around. Because we've maintained that edge flow, I can now utilize this to create my seam. So I'm just going to go to my UV toolkit on the right hand side, and I'm just going to start by cutting this, and now I've got this broken up into two shells that I can work with. I'm now going to separate this inner portion out from the fuller portion of our model out from the outer portion. So I'm just going to double click this edge, and I'm going to do the same on this side. There we go. And for that, I'm just going to hit cut, and it's broken these out into their own individual seams. For the most part, these are in a good way, but to minimize sort of warping at the top end, I'm actually just going to make sure I cut these as part of this process. So where we can see this pole where three edges come together, I'm actually just going to double click the edge going up, but it's actually going to intersect with that one. So I'm just going to hold Control and deselect that one. And I'll do the same thing here, holding Shift to double click and double clicking that, and holding Control and just deselecting that one outside of our cut boundary. I'll do the same here. Just remove that portion, and I'll do the same here and just remove that portion there. And with that, it should be in a nice position to move forwards with this. So I'm just inspecting my UVs as they are right now. I'm just going to hit cut, and we can see it's built those seams. We're actually just going to see how these unfold now. So I'm just going to go to unfold them, and they've come out quite nicely. I'm just going to check them against my checkerboard now, and I'm going to orient them in my arrange and layout function. And I'm just going to see how the UV on here looks. We can see for the most part these squares are quite uniform throughout, indicating minimal distortion. As we go through, there's a little it's difficult to say on this portion whether it is distortion or simply the curvature of the mesh. I'm leaning towards curvature of the mesh rather than distortion of the UV. We can see it kind of persisting down here as well. So I'm quite pleased with that. I'm just going to dim the image so I can see it a little bit better by going to image and then dim image. We now need to do these shells, and these might need a bit of continuous work, but I think they should be okay initially. We're just going to unfold them, see how they come out, and we will orient them. And the issue we've got with these, Maya is calculating them as their best means of unfolding them is giving them this wiggly kind of look, which we actually want to avoid. So rather than that, I'm actually just going to do a planar projection of these. So with these shells that we've got selected, one at a time, I'm just going to do a planar projection. So go to create and hit planar. You can see it's going to come out looking quite horrible at the moment, and this is because our planar map is actually the wrong way round. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go to my attribute editor, and sometimes you have to go through some trial and error on this point. I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees on the x-axis, and that's given us the wrong direction, so I'm now going to do 90 degrees on the z-axis, and again it's gone the wrong way. So I'm actually just going to set our y-axis to 0, There we go, it's giving us this projection. We can see it's also awfully thin, and our UV is now skewed really, really wide. And this is because it's judging the planar UV off the proportions of the model, where actually I want a square UV. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set my projection height to the same value as my projection width, or vice versa. So I'll just put in 0.794. There we go. It's made it absolutely huge, but you can see now it's given us this perfect proportion of the actual shape. So I'm just going to scale this down. We're not going to worry about just how big it is yet, but it's given us this nice viewpoint. And I'm just going to inspect this now for any kind of distortion throughout the mesh. There's a little bit of warping just on the blade here, so there is a little bit of work that I want to do now. I'm going to go back to my UV toolkit, and we're actually just going to go to unfold along. I'm going to go U, and I'll just hit that, and it's just going to spread it out widthways now a little bit, and you can see it's got rid of some of that distortion now. I could do it also on V, but all this is going to do is just unfold it on one axis at a time rather than both. We're now going to do the same process on our other shell, so I'm just going to go to create planar. I'll go to my attribute editor, and I'll set that y-axis to 0. There we go, it's made it awfully wide, and I'm just going to set that projection height to the same value as the width, so 0.794. I could just put a flat 2 in each of these, just to demonstrate. There we go, it's made it absolutely huge, but as long as that projection height and width is the same value, that will normalize this. And we're not worrying about the actual like size relative to one another just yet. We're going to use our layout function for that in just a little bit. And we've still got this distortion on the blade edges where it bends, so I'm just going to do that unfold along U just to widen it out a little bit and make these a little bit cleaner on our UVs. There we go. And that's our blade done there. Now we could go to our shell mode and hit layout, and that'll normalize all of our sizes, but we can actually do something a little bit different. If I go to transform, we can do what's called textile density setting. And all this is going to do, I'll just, scale these so they're obviously quite a different size. Textile density is the amount of pixels per unit of it. And I can actually set all these so each face has the same amount of pixels in it. Currently our map size is set to 512. I'm not fussed about this, but it's actually got a value of 32 here. If I hit set, it's actually going to normalize all of the sizes of these, so each face is 32 pixels per face basically. It's why it's gone so huge. There is some maths involved in this, but it's simply another way that we can normalize the sizes of our UVs. But oftentimes I prefer to do layout just because it organizes my shells a bit nicer, as we can see right there. So that's the blade completed in terms of its approach to our UV. I'm just going to unisolate it, and we're now going to move up to the hilt. And our hilt might look initially a bit daunting because of the complex shape that we've got with this, but for this it's just going to be about breaking it up into its constituent parts. So I'm going to start out by just selecting, well, we've got our projection. Just to clarify, I'm going to start out just by selecting this edge loop that goes all the way around and cutting it up. This is going to break it into 2 different shells. On my shell view, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to identify which edge is this border edge on my model. I'll press F for Foxtrot to focus my camera on it in my UV editor. And if I double click that, it's persisted all the way around. And one of the reasons I've done it in there, because in here, when I've double clicked it, it's persisted round to this portion, and I don't want to cut a seam on this point. However, selecting it in my UV, it's going to go onto the border of the shell that we've cut, so it's not actually going to impact that point there. So with this, I'm just going to cut it. I'm going to disable my grid for a moment, and I'm going to put on my shaded display very quickly. And it's just so I can see which side is correct. There we go. I can just break it apart. And this is coming along quite nicely now in terms of its shell. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to double click this edge, and you can see that actually it's persisting all the way around for this. And I don't want to cut these bits out as their own separate shell. I want this to be the sharpened area. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select one edge, and I'll wrap it round to the other side. There we go. And I'm going to do the same point just on this side. And all I'm doing is I'm just cutting the shells, well, cutting the UVs on these sharp portions of it. So I'll just hit cut, There we go. And now all I'm going to do is on this center portion where we've met this sharpened point on here, I'm just going to select the edges there, and I'll go all the way around there, and we'll just cut that. And you can see that I'm setting up my UV shell so that on these really, really steep angles and these sharpened points, we can flare it out, and it's going to allow us to minimize distortion. And now I'll just select these. I'll hit unfold. I'm going to orient them, and this one I don't like how it's oriented that way. I want it to be even, so I'm just going to rotate it. And if I just go to my grid, we're just going to inspect the UVs once again, and we can see we've managed to do that with minimal distortion. Again, if there is a little bit of distortion, it's hardly the end of the world, but it is just something to be aware of when you're creating your UVs, is that you want to kind of minimize that set. But we wouldn't have been able to set this up in such a way if we hadn't done this initial seam going all the way around to break it into two constituent parts, and then broken up these ones here. Imagine it like a piece of paper that you're trying to carve into a particular shape. You need to put the creases in the particular areas. So now we're moving on to this point, and I'm going to take this same methodology of cutting my seams predominantly on sharp areas. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start out on this bottom. I want it to be its own shell, so I'm just going to double click the edges going all the way around. However, I don't want this bit to be collected as part of it. I actually want this to go all the way around here. So I've just deselected those edges, and I've just connected it together there for our UV. I'm going to double click the edges that we've got here. There we go. Just checking around to make sure I've not selected something I didn't. There we go. And I'll just deselect these two edges that persist. And we'll just cut these. And it's just again about breaking, when you're UVing an object, it's about breaking it up into constituent parts. I'm not going to unfold it yet, as I want to move on to the rest of it. But now I just want to cut a seam going all the way around here, but I don't want these shells to be a part of it. I'm then going to select this edge loop on the border here, and all I'm doing with this is I'm just cutting it to line up, and you can see if I go to it, because of the edge flow that we've got, it's actually persisted really, really nicely all the way around. It's looped from there to up there, and it's gone all the way around to this end as well. So I can just add another seam there, making sure to select that portion. And I just need to select this edge loop now. There we go. And that trick we did in the pommel on the last video, just going to select the edges and drag them and make sure that I've only selected the ones that I wanted to. It looks grotesque. It's not an issue because I'm just going to press Ctrl Z to bring it back. But I'm putting my seam down here just because it's going to allow us to, have it border on the sharp points. And I'm just going to deselect these edges here on the end and check that I've done it for both sides. Excuse me. So at that point, I'm quite pleased with where that is now. So I'm just going to hit cut. It's broken these up into two shells now, one for each side. And you can probably guess where I'm heading with this, in that I want to break these end caps that we've got here up into their own shells. So to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this edge going up here, and we'll do the same here, just selecting those, and I'm just going to deselect these ones here, and I'm going to double click that edge there just to create that edge loop going around. If I just focus, this is how we've got it looking. I'm going to add this edge here, either side. There we go. And then I'm just going to double click this edge going all the way around, and I'll deselect the ones inboard of that loop that we've just done. So that's the type of area we want our seams. Actually, because it goes so flat at the top, I'm going to undo that process. And I'm actually just going to deselect these four inboard there. So it's come out with a sort of intersection here. We can see the angle gets steeper at this portion, and I'm going to want to take a projection from the side rather than elsewhere. But it's also broken this bottom portion up nicely for a step that we'll be taking later on down the line. And I'm just going to repeat that layout on the other side. There we go. So just coming over here, double click that edge. We're just going to deselect those portions there, select that, and select that while deselecting the ones that come inboard, and I'll just select these edges that we've got to create our seams. Just double check that I've done everything the same way on either side. So I've got those selected, that's brilliant. And I'm just going to hit cut. And again, we're breaking it up now into constituent parts that makes the UVing process easier. This is by no means the most optimal way of UVing this. It's always dependent on the object. But I've now got several independent shells for this UV, and you can see I've just broken it up into different areas. Now I can just select these, and all I want to do on these, I'm actually just going to select these two edges at the top and these two edges on the bottom, and I'll repeat that either side. And I'm just going to hit cut now on these. You can see I can just see that they're selected there. If I wanted to, I could select the edges here and put these into a separate shell. I'm going to actually. I'm going to select these edges as well, and I'll just persist that along the side, and it's just going to help with how our object unfolds. There we go. I'm just going to hit cut. And now I'm going to select all these portions of our hilt, and I'm just going to unfold them. I'm going to orient them. Anything that's a different angle to another, I'm just going to normalize to the same angle. And what I'll do for these, I'm just going to lay out all these pieces now that I've unfolded them. It's going to take a moment to go through. I don't like how this is a bit wonky, so I'm just going to change that. I'll do the same with this one here, and this is for my own satisfaction. I don't necessarily need to do this. But now that these are all laid out and they are organized a little bit, I'm just going to turn on my checkerboard, and I'm just going to inspect for distortion. Again, having a little bit of distortion isn't too much of an issue, but we do want to keep an eye out for major pieces. But because I've just taken the sharp edges of this piece and elected to cut the seams there, it's allowing this to unfold more appropriately. Excuse me. So we're part of the way there. We've got our blade unfolded, we've got our sword unfolded. We're just now going to move on to unfolding our to our hilt and pommel, and this one is going to be really easy in some areas. It's going to be a bit more difficult in others, so I'm just going to isolate it on here. I will hide the checkerboard pattern, and we're going to start out nice and straightforward initially. With this piece, I'm just going to select the edge loop. The edge loop's going all the way around the circumference on the base of our pommel. And this is a great area for me to talk about topology and how it relates to UV unwrapping. When we are UV unwrapping, something is either topologically a cylinder or it is topologically a plane. So if I was to say, select these edges and these edges, and I'll just select those and those. I'm just going to go to select convert selection to contained faces. Oh, okay, don't. Where are we? Just going to grow out that face. If I was just to isolate this a moment, this is technically a plane. Even though it's circular, it's purely a planar set of faces. So I could, if I just go to convert selection, edge perimeter, I could just cut this. I've now got this shell. I'll move that out of the way so I can actually select what I'm working with. And I could unfold this and it's going to come out as perfectly circular. That's perfect. If we look at this portion here, so I'll just cut that very quickly. This is topologically a cylinder. If I was just to unfold this now, it's going to come out as a circle. It's going to look okay initially, but this is no longer representative of the faces in the 3D space. If we turned on our checkerboard and I just made this huge so we could see it, we could say, it's taken this cylindrical shape and it's tried to unfold it as a plane on here, and it's giving us this weird distortion as one side of the edge, or one side of the respective faces, is wider than the others, even though in the 3D space this isn't the case. So on something like this, to unfold it, I actually need to add a seam somewhere, and I'm going to line this seam up with the side of the blade. So I'll find it on here, which is just this one here, and I'm just going to cut it. And now when I unfold it, it's actually giving us this straight line, and it's something to bear in mind as we are unfolding objects. Is if something is topologically a cylinder wrapping around on itself, we need to cut the same lengthways on it to allow it to unfold. If something is topologically a plane, such as what we've got here, we can just cut the border edges and unfold it as is. So I'm just going to go through now and start doing my seams on this portion here. There we go. I just cut those. Go to my object mode very quickly. Just isolate. I need to do my cut here as well. And I've very quickly managed to break this out into separate shells just by selecting the appropriate edges. And I'm going to now break these up into what needs a lengthways seam and what can just be left as is. So these two portions are going to need lengthways seams. So I'm just going to find that edge that I had on here, and I'll find the respective ones on these, which is just there. Just because I want all my seams to line up, I don't have to do this step. And I'll just double click them on our UV rather than our 3D model so it doesn't persist down the model. And I'll just click cut. And now these are all in a position where we can just unfold them. I'm going to orient them. I want all these to be lengthways. And I'm not going to worry about the laying out. Similar to when we did our lock and chest, I'm not fussed about them being perfectly laid out just yet. I just want them to be unfolded, ready to go for later. Now going to move on to the rest of our handle, and I'm actually going to skip the handle itself and move on to the pommel. So I'm going to select this edge loop here and that edge loop there. You can see just on the border where we have that angle change, and I'll just hit cut. I'm actually just going to move my handle out of the way because I don't want it right now. And I'll move this over here and unfold it. There we go. Just move it with its other pieces. And we're just going to start moving through and changing, well, cutting our seams initially. And because it's entirely circular for a lot of this, I can just double click some edges and it's getting everything for us really nicely. There we go, and I'll do my cut there. So we're just going to hit cut. I'm going to do that same process that I did earlier. Anything that is technically cylindrical, I'm just going to cut a seam in it. I'm going to double click them just so that they reach up and get all of those tiny border edges. I'll move this out of the way. I'll select these. Make sure I've not missed any. There we go. Unfold them. Orient them. Just going to rotate them 90 degrees. And I'll just move them over here. And on our pommel, I'm just going to skip these sections for a moment, and I'm just going to go up here and do that same process that we've already done, finding those steep angle changes. I'm just going to cut them as we see them. And because the angle changes aren't too bad on this, there's a lot that I'm not actually going to cut lengthways seams into. There we go. So I'll just hit cut. And on here, I'm just going to find those steeper angles. I'll just double click them in my UV editor. I'll hit cut. I'll just select these now, deselect that one. We'll do our unfold operation and we'll orient them. You can see these have come out curved. This is because they are, well, this one less of an issue, but this one, because it's actually slightly tapered, it will curve. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to hit straighten UVs on these, on this first one. There we go, and we'll see how it works on this one. It's only straightening portion of it, but this is the more tapered one, so I'm going to leave that as a curved UV, and I'll just move those over here for now. And that leaves us with the main portion of the pommel and the handle itself. We're going to start with the pommel out of these two, and I'm just going to break this up into constituent pieces. So I'm going to select this edge loop here and this edge loop here, and we're going to repeat this process around just this one where it changes angle steeply. And because of the way we've set up our edge flow when we've done our high poly, this is actually allowing me to, means we've got edge flow going all the way around, so I just have to double click them. So I just go to cut, and it's broken it up into 4 portions, well 5 portions, sorry, each inner as well as the outer. I'm not going to do anything with the inner just yet. I'm going to focus on the outer. And this is a really straightforward one, to be perfectly honest. We've got a couple of options in terms of how we approach this. For this one, I'm actually just going to select our edges where they meet here. I don't want to click on our 3D model themselves, but I'm just going to go around and select, and we can see how they move inwards there. So I'm just going to select these, and it's just the crown. I'm going to select this up into 6 different shells. Actually, no, we won't. There's an easier way we can do this. It's the next one down where we've got our edge loops. I'm just going to double click them in our UV. And because we're selecting them in our UV, once again, it's not persisting around. I've only selected these portions. If I just double click to the edge on my 3D model, it would persist all the way around, which we don't want. So I'm just going to hit cut on that one. It's broken this up into its own shell, or it should have done. Have I missed one? Oh, for some reason, the cut function hasn't worked. So I'll just go back a few steps until I've got them all selected. We'll just try cutting them again. There we go. And have we missed an edge? Most likely we have. Yes, we've not selected this one here. That's okay. Just go in and cut it. And we've got that one shell there. We're going to deal with that in just a moment. But we're just going to do that same process on the base of our model as well. Just check that it's persisting. It is. Click cut. It's now taken these. Can move them. And all I'm going to do is just see how an initial unfold on these works. There we go. So that unfold has gone quite nicely. I think so. We're just going to check distortion for now. And it's going to be all skew width because they're all rotated. So I'm just going to orient my shells a little bit. And there's a little bit of distortion on this one here, just as it goes through. But some of it is, you know, because of how the model is actually laid out, well, because of how got the curvature on the model, and some of it is just plain distortion. So we're going to come back to these in a moment. These lengthways ones that we've done now are perfectly fine. So I'm just going to move them aside. There we go. For these, I'm just going to choose an edge loop part of the way down. I'm not being too particular about where I select it, although I don't want it that one. I want it on this one, so I'll just double click them in my edge. And it's lined up quite nicely with the cuts we made earlier. I'll just hit cut now, and it's just allowing it to fan out. So I just hit unfold, and it's giving us these semicircles, but that distortion has been minimized even if we do have a seam visible on our sword. So I can just go to my UV shell now. I'll move these ones with their compatriots over here. And this piece initially might look a bit annoying or difficult to unwrap, but it's really straightforward. We're just going to cut those edge loop seams initially. We just want them on the borders to begin with. Oh, that's the wrong one. That's the one we want. And again, because of our edge flow, it's just allowing us to wrap all the way around on it, and we'll just do this for all of them. There we go. Sometimes it can be finicky selecting the ones you want, so just take your time. And we'll just cut these now. It's broken these up into individual shells. I've missed our edge loop on this one, so we're just going to select this again, unless I've got some 0 volume faces. Nope, that's where our problem is. Just go to vertex. So having fixed that now, I've just gone through and taken a new camera-based selection. Basically, when I'd done my low poly and finished it off, when I'd done the bevel around here, I'd actually missed one edge. So that's really, really something you need to look out for as you're going through this piece. But back to where we were, I'm just going to go through and double click my edge loops. And I'm going to do it on my UV editor this time. We're just going to go through and select these edge loops going all the way around on each quadrant. We've got this done on most of them. There we go. And I'll just hit cut in my UV toolkit, and it's broken them up into their own shells now. Obviously the sizing is off, we're going to fix that. On my actual editor, I'm just going to select the corner pieces, or some corner angles on each UV. And you'll notice I'm just double clicking them on the UV itself, so as to not persist around as we talked about previously. And I'll just cut, and then with these, I'll just select them and unfold them. They're going to come out a little bit weird, so I might want to break them up a little bit more, but if I go to my checkerboard, we can see that the distortion is minimal. So, and it's also just such a small piece. So I'm just going to move these out the way now. Actually, I'm going to layer them out just to normalize our sizing. I'll just move them aside. Now for these, we're quite straightforward. We're just going to do that same process again. So I'm just going to go to my 3D viewport. I'm just going to double click the edges on these corners, and again, because of our because of the way we've set up our geometry, it's just persisting all the way around. There we go. So we're just going to hit cut. These shells, so the outer and the inner faces that we can see that I've just selected here, these are perfectly fine just being unfolded as they are. We've got a little bit of an issue with this one. We're just going to see if we've put a seam in the wrong place. Yes, we have. I've accidentally selected some edges up here, and this is why it's good to inspect your models as you go through. If I just bring those together and sew them, and just unfold this again, there we go, it's all laid out. And I'm just going to move these aside. I'll lay them out again for the same reason that I did earlier, and I'll orient them. And I'll just move them aside for now. You can tell and see until all my shells are UV'd and unfolded, sorry, I don't really worry about laying them out, and this is something you will have noticed throughout this piece as we've gone through the chest as well. So on these portions, all I need to do is just select some corner edges and double click them. There we go. And hit cut. And I'll just unfold them and lay them out. There we go. And then just move them over here. And that's the actual pommel all unfolded. It's just on this spiral handle. And there was a reason why I've not unfolded these faces at the top, as well as these faces at the bottom. And that's because as we go through, our actual reasoning for that will become clear. So I'm actually going to change to my front viewport for this. And I'm going to go to my face select. And very carefully, I'm going to select the faces going along the top here, and you can see I've selected these faces. If I go to my 3D viewport though, press F, you can see I've been very careful to select all of them from the front without anything else. Oh no, that's the wrong step. What am I doing? What I'm going to do is I'm going to select all the faces along the top here. I need to select this face loop here as well. But now very carefully I'm going to hold Control, which is our subtractive select, and I'm just going to marquee drag all the faces that meet the top of what we've worked with. And I'm drag selecting so it persists around the back as well. But it's very careful we stay in line with the border faces, and the reason why is going to become visible in just a moment. So I have now selected I've selected these faces. You can see them just on here. I am going to have to cut a seam at some point, but what I'm going to do with this is I'm actually just going to do its own camera-based selection. So camera-based. So rather than worrying about selecting particular edges, I've got this now. And I'll just double-click the edge loop. Any edge loop will do, just on here. I'm just going to check that it goes through. It meets to this pole here. I need to select this edge just at the very top as well. And I'm going to cut that. I'm going to unfold it. And what it's actually done is given us this sort of sawtooth going all the way around, but it's managed to isolate these together because these edges on the side of it aren't joined together. These were always going to be separate anyway, but it's allowed me to select just that portion and make it its own point. Because they're not selected and they're on a 90 degree, they'll just flatten down. I need to do that same process on the bottom now. So I'm just going to go to my front viewport and we'll do the same process again. So in face select, just drag select these, and very carefully, holding control, I'm just deselecting these faces as they meet the bottom. I'm just going to go to my 3D viewport and make sure they're all selected. They are. And I'll just do a camera based on them again. Rather than worrying about getting the edges, I'll do an edge. I'll just do a edge selection on this, on one of the vertical ones, and I just need to select this one there and cut those. And once again, I'll just unfold. There we go. And again, it's given us a sawtooth. And now, actually, now for this piece, we just need to worry about the hilt. I'm just moving stuff all out of the way. The handle, sorry, not the hilt. And this one's going to be really easy. If I double click that edge, going all the way down there, it's going to persist all the way up. There we go. And it's just going to meet the seam at either end. And it's just about making our life a bit easier. And if I cut those, we've got this spiral cut. I can select the shell now, unfold it. It's going to be angled because these are, when they're unfolded, angled faces. But it's all laid out now. So I can select everything in my scene. And actually, I'm just going to select my pommel initially. I'm going to lay everything out to normalize the sizes. There we go. It's squeezing it together. It's not the prettiest UV, but it doesn't need to be. I don't like quite how close some of these are packing together. So I'm actually just going to go to my tools. So modify, I'm going to find layout, and I'm opening the settings for it. I'm going to increase the shell padding to 20 and hit apply. There we go. And it's just giving us a little bit more space between each of the shells. What I'm going to do is just move these aside. So I've preserved them. I'll do the same with this. Apply. And it's maintaining the layout, it's just padding them out a little bit more. And I'll just hit apply on that. And now, I'm going to actually, rather than using our layout function to get everything laid out appropriately, I'm just going to do this by eye, because we can see the checkerboard on here. We can see our shells for our hilt are actually massive in comparison to the ones on the handle, on the blade, sorry. So I'm just going to scale those manually and move them in. And we'll do the same process for the handle. And we're just manually doing our proportions. There we go. And if we wanted to add any accessories or ancillary portions to this, we've actually got space now on our UV to work with. If I was really optimizing this, what I might do is rotate some of these, put them in the gaps of our on the gaps where our fuller goes on the blade, and then rotate stuff and pack it together. But for now, I'm quite happy with the layout of how that functions. So with that, that ties up today's content. Remember that as you go through your original prop, there will be areas of these tutorials to help you out in terms of tool usage and how we approach various different problems with 3D modeling. But for now, I'm just going to finalize this by once again deleting our history. I'm going to save this. So save scene as, and we're going to call this sword UV unwrap. And I'm now ready to move on to creating my high poly and actually texturing it in Substance. With that, if you do have any concerns or want any help with anything, please feel free to reach out to myself or another member of staff on the teaching team. But with that, have a lovely rest of your day, and I will see you in the next one.